family, and welcome to Read It Right, the series where we slow down, open our Bibles, and make sure that we're reading our scripture in context. One of the things I've noticed is that some Bible verses become especially popular during difficult seasons, when people are tired, when they're feeling discouraged, overwhelmed, or simply trying to keep going. There are certain verses that seem to appear everywhere, and today's verse is one of those, and it's Isaiah chapter 40, verse 31. And it says, "But those who love the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles, and they will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint." It's a beautiful verse, isn't it? And you'll find it on walls. And you know what? I say this for many of the verses, but you will really find them on walls, like on social media posts, on Christian merchandise, or often quoted on messages of encouragement when people are feeling exhausted or worn out by life. And honestly, it is encouraging. I felt encouraged just reading it right now. But I think we appreciate this verse even more when we understand what was happening when Isaiah wrote it. Because Isaiah wasn't speaking to people who were having a great week. He wasn't speaking to people whose lives were easy. He was speaking to God's people during a season of uncertainty, discouragement, and hardship. And the people of Israel were struggling. Many felt forgotten. Many felt abandoned. Many were questioning whether God had seen their suffering at all. And in fact, earlier in the chapter, God's people essentially were asking, does God even know what's happening to us? Is he around? Can he see what's going on? And if we're honest, that's probably the question that many of us ask. God, can you see? It's a good point, right? Do you see what's happening to your children? And maybe not out loud, but in our hearts we ask that quite often when life gets difficult, or when prayers seem unanswered. And when prayers seem unanswered, when we're carrying burdens nobody can see, and when we've been waiting for something for a very long time. So it's easy to wonder where God is in the midst of it all. And that's exactly why Isaiah begins by reminding them who God is. He reminds them that God is the creator of the heaven and the earth. And he reminds them also that God never grows tired. He doesn't need strength in the same way that we do. He reminds them that God never grows weary. In other words, before Isaiah talks about strength, he talks about God's strength, right? Because that's the whole point. That's the whole point. The hope of this verse isn't that we're strong. The hope of this verse is that God is. And then Isaiah says something that's really important. And he says, those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. Now, depending on the translation that you're reading, you might see the word hope or trust or wait. So those who trust in the Lord will renew their strength. And I think that's important because biblical waiting isn't simply sitting around and doing nothing. It's not waiting like how we would describe waiting today. It's more like trusting, expecting. It's placing your confidence in God even whilst you're waiting for him to move. And if we're honest, that's often the hardest part. Most of us don't mind trusting God when things are happening quickly. If you trust God today and the thing happens tomorrow, fantastic. But if you trust him today and it happens in a week, another story. A year, or what about 10 years? It changes. And the challenge comes from when we're waiting. When we're waiting for answers or for healing or for provision, when we're waiting for direction, whatever circumstances that we find ourselves in, when we're waiting, the waiting circumstances change depending on what we're waiting for. And yet Isaiah says that it's in that place of trusting and waiting on God that our strength is renewed. Notice he doesn't say we find the strength ourselves. I love this so much, guys. I love so much that we don't have to do much for God to love us, for him to be there for us, for him to cover us. He's not saying that we need to find the strength. He's not saying that we need to go looking for the strength or build the strength. He just says that, and he doesn't say that we renew our strength through positive thinking. He doesn't say like we simply need to try harder. He says the source of our strength is in God himself. He will renew our strength. And then Isaiah gives us a beautiful picture where he says, they will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary, and they will walk and not be faint. And for years, I used to read that verse and focus almost solely on the soaring part. Like, oh, I'll just be breezing through everything. I'll be flying up in the air. This is great. Because if we're honest, soaring sounds exciting. And it sounds impressive. It sounds like, it's not ordinary. Walking around sounds ordinary. But when you hear the word soaring, you're like, yeah, this is a miracle. But have you ever noticed the order of which he writes it in? Isaiah doesn't end with soaring. He ends with walking. Oh, Jesus. He ends with walking, right? I'm sorry, but I just got a revelation right there. If you got it, catch it. But he doesn't, like, wouldn't you normally, if we were to say it, would we not start with walking and then go to soaring? He starts with soaring and then goes to walking. And I think there's something really powerful in that, because sometimes God gives us seasons where we feel like we're soaring, like we're breezing through everything. This is great. Everything seems clear. Our faith is strong. We can see what he's doing. We know what's happening, and other times we're running. We're making progress. We're moving forward. I wonder which one of those I'm in right now. Need to think about that. But we're growing. It's happening. But there are also seasons where all we can do is keep walking, one faithful step at a time. Just walk, even if it's slow, one step at a time. Nothing dramatic, nothing spectacular, quite ordinary. Just continuing to trust God. And according to Isaiah, that's still evidence of his strength at work in us. His strength is not just in the soaring, it's also in the walking. And sometimes we think strength looks like never struggling or things being a breeze. But biblical strength looks like continuing to trust God when everything in you feels tired, continuing to pray when you haven't seen the answer yet, continuing to follow Jesus when the road seems difficult, or continuing to believe God that he's faithful even when you can't yet see what he's doing. And that's the kind of strength that Isaiah is talking about, not the absence of weakness, but the presence of God's sustaining power in your weakness. So if you're in a season right now where you feel exhausted, discouraged, overwhelmed, or like you're just feeling worn out, Isaiah 40:31 isn't telling you to, push harder. It's reminding you where your strength comes from. Your strength was never supposed to come from you. You cannot sustain yourself. Your strength, where are you going to get the strength from? Not to be rude, but where are you going to get it from? It comes from the God who never grows weary. He doesn't grow weary. So if you get your strength from him, you won't grow weary. The God who never grows tired, the God who is still faithful, and the God who is still at work, even in the waiting. So what's behind this verse? Have you been quoting it wrong? Maybe not completely, but Isaiah 40:31 isn't just a promise that God will, he'll make you feel stronger. It's a reminder that when we place our hope in him, he gives us the strength we need in order for us to remain faithful in every season, whether we're soaring, running, or just simply walking. Remember, family, that the goal isn't just to know the verse. The goal is to know the God who gave it. Grace and peace. I'll see you in the next one.